everyone, welcome back to Grid Chat. I'm your host, Marissa Tandon, and today we are going to be recapping the race that I'm sure everybody tuned into because it's the biggest one of the year. And today I will not be doing so alone. I will be doing so with my pal, Amanda, who is here because we met about Formula One on the internet, and then we hung out at a Formula One race, and now we're talking about Formula One. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Yes, we connected and met, and now we're doing a podcast episode together, all in the span of 1 month. The month of May.
I love it.
Truly bringing motorsport fans together. Say this as I'm literally at the Indy 500 right now and doing this. Like, the race just ended, and we're like, let's talk about more motorsport.
Well, before we dive in, I always like to start with like, how did you get into F1 and what teams do you support?
I don't like slow sports, so I actually really got into hockey on my own. But my friend, because I come from like a baseball family fully, like my brother played baseball, my dad coached baseball, my uncle had a box, my dad currently has season seats, like full baseball family. And until they introduced the pitch clock, baseball is very slow and very boring. Now whoever came up with the pitch clock is super sexy. But my friend was obsessed with motorsport and obsessed with F1. She found it through Drive to Survive during lockdown is when she found it. And she was like, you don't like slow sports, you're gonna love Formula One. Like, it's dramatic and fast. I was like, okay, so I'll try it. I got through a very grating first season of Drive to Survive. I don't care what anyone says. The first season is not good. It's very hard to get through. I have to warn people that now when I tell people about that. But I got through it. And then it's really funny because my friend literally sent me a screenshot the other day. She's like, happy end of you finishing Drive to Survive anniversary. Because I texted her.
Is it really?
I was like, so like not too long ago. It's been like a year and a half-ish that like I've been watching. But like I wasn't finished with Drive to Survive when I started actually watching the Grand Prix. So I had messaged her like when I had actually finally finished it. And I was like, she's like, oh my God, are you obsessed with F1 now? And I was like, yes. And I think I might be in love with Daniel Ricciardo. Is what I said. And now I feel the complete opposite. But I don't know how to like things in a chill way. So very quickly it became 90% of my personality. And luckily I'm a YouTuber who does event reviews. And the fun thing about being self-employed is that you can make your hyperfixations apply to your self-employment job. So then you can make money off your hyperfixations. So now I have been to 3 Grand Prix in person in the last, 9 months.
Oh my God. So you've done Japan, Miami. What was the third?
I was at the first Vegas one. I went to Vegas.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
You witnessed another red flag race.
Another red flag race. I was there. I was one of the people that they kicked out at 1:30 in the morning. And you know what? I still get complaints on TikToks from that time now.
Do you really?
Like, it's because people, I don't know what's going on with the internet, Marissa. People don't read dates. They don't check when something was posted. And it's like, oh, yes, here is the F1 Vegas Grand Prix. Of course, that's not happening currently. So why are you commenting as if I don't know that it was like that we were asked to leave because Carlos's car got damaged and there was a red flag? Like it's like they comment on the videos that I made there on site as if I just posted them months later. It's very fascinating. I do think the internet is making us dumber. I really do.
Yeah. No, I honestly, media literacy is dead.
No, it's funny because I also get it on like because before I went to Vegas, which I already knew I was going to Vegas, I had been in Vegas for TwitchCon like a month or so before the race. Like the same weekend as Coda was when I was at TwitchCon. And they were still setting up for the Vegas Grand Prix. And I was like, I don't think they're going to be done in 2.5 weeks. Like, I don't think they're going to be ready. And so I went back another week later and to film the progress. And I made a full video about how I didn't think Vegas was ready for F1 and like just a bunch of issues and things that they were having. And that video, I think, gets recommended to people a lot more than like literally any of my reviews of like the actual Grand Prix now, because the comments I still get where they're like, the race went well. And it's like, okay, again, they're acting as if I posted that after the race. It's very fascinating.
I think it's like no one looks at a calendar. No one looks at a date. Like, it's fascinating. I don't get it, but look, what can you do? But speaking of like controversy that surrounds things, this track every year has the same conversation that comes up on the internet, which I find so fascinating because each time people act like it's like a new conversation, which is that the Monaco Grand Prix is not actually certified like grade 1 material. It is actually like too short, too slow, and too dangerous, basically. But we keep it on the calendar every year. And there's a lot of people who argue quite a bit about, like, it's time to remove it, it's time to replace it.
I mean, my favorite tweet that I saw that made me just realize, "Oh, okay, because I fully understand the criticisms. Personally, I'm someone where I'm like, I love the history that comes with, like, the Monaco GP and everything. Like, I want if we could keep all of the original F1 circuit, like, at the start of F1 to now, I would personally love that as someone who's also a history nerd at the same time. Like, there's something I think very romantic about that concept to some degree, which I know it's like, "Oh, this is sports, baby. Who cares about romance?" But listen, okay, I think I love that. But the tweet where I was like, "Oh, I can't talk to these people that are, like, really upset about the track," because I do think, like, especially watching the race and watching previous races, you clearly see the very real safety, technical issues, things like that. But
Sure.
so those I understand. The people I don't understand are the people that are like, yeah, there's a tweet where it said, "I know like a heritage track, but we can make new heritage." And I was like, "Okay, cool. We're never gonna have like an effective, productive dialogue about this." Like in
Yeah.
this particular instance, like there are just people who don't care. It's all about the future, baby. And I'm just not that way. I do think that tradition and history to some degree in this sport, I do think that means something. And like fully tweak the track, make it just, like an auxiliary thing that maybe isn't exactly like on the race calendar or something. But like the reality is I think that Monaco is such a big part. Like you just said, it was like the biggest race of the year. And I don't think that that's going to change really. But yeah, I do think that these cars are getting too big. And,
Yeah.
it's like that's I think it was Christian. I don't like talking about him, but Christian Horner. I think even he said it's like these cars are too big for this track or something like that today.
Mhm.
And it's like, I mean, who is making these cars too big for this track at the same time? Like, I do think there's a more technical conversation I think involved in here where we can look at, the track. Obviously, maybe they've outgrown the track. That's always a possibility. That's always a reality, I think. But also,
Mhm.
it's like, I think the discussion about have F1 cars gotten too big has been around for a lot in recent years.
Yeah, I think the thing that's hard to me about the idea of, like, getting rid of Monaco is, like, the one track, the one race that actually does seep outside of F1 into pop culture is Monaco. Like, you always
Mhm.
have the whole, like, celebrity aspect of going to Cannes and then going to straight to Monaco. Everybody's aware of it. The same way, like, everybody's aware of Michael Jordan versus basketball. Like, it is the same type of cultural touchstone. Like, it's referenced in Gossip Girl, it's referenced in Iron Man, though that's the historic Monaco Grand Prix.
No, it's funny, I remember seeing someone just saw an analysis about, Blair Waldorf and, like,
Mm,
referencing Nelson Piquet riding around Monaco
yeah.
Grand Prix, and I do think it's something that you're right, like, the cultural significance of the race itself, the Grand Prix itself, is something that kind of can't be ignored, especially when which it's interesting because I do wanna know which part of the fans are the ones complaining about the Monaco Grand Prix because there's quite a lot of fans that have been fans since before 2019 or even during lockdown for whatever reason, but it wasn't through Drive to Survive as they claim, but, like, for whatever
Mm, mhm.
reason, they just got involved in the sport, which I I don't know. "Oh, you're a fan of Drive to Survive," but, like, what it's a whole thing. Okay,
Whatever, yeah.
let's not get I won't get into that 'cause I'll just keep talking. Um, but I mean, the ones complaining about Monaco, I don't know if they may also be the American fans that are like, the newer fans, and that's why it's comments like, "Oh, who cares about the heritage? Who cares about this?"
Mm,
But then you've got, um, older fans or, like, more long-term fans that are complaining about, like, Miami and Vegas, and it's like, "Oh, this is so gauche and bougie and whatever," and it's all, like, making fun of referencing Monaco. Like, the fact that Miami references Monaco is
yeah.
crazy with, like, their boats on their fake marina and all this stuff. Like, there you can't I don't think you can ignore the cultural significance of Monaco, but then I also wanna know, like, I don't know, I wanna see the demographic divide of, like, who's complaining about what when it comes to Monaco versus, like, the US GPs.
It's interesting because I think it's like a mix. Like, I did see a bunch of, like, tweets and threads this morning of people being like, the most interesting one was referencing George and his, radio message where they basically were like, the fact that on lap 15, some were saying like a driver is being told that there's nothing to gain by going faster is the biggest argument for getting rid of the Monaco Grand Prix. And I was like, okay, I
Mhm.
do get your point if you're arguing about like exciting racing. We basically watched like 70 laps of tire management today, and
Yeah.
that's not the most exciting thing to watch, but there is something like unbeatable to me about the feeling of watching Charles win this week. Like there's you can't get that feeling without the history of Monaco, which like maybe make the cars smaller. You know what I mean? Maybe make the cars smaller.
I don't know, because I do think that like all these the teams I think all had upgrades this for race specific upgrades to maximize downforce.
Mhm,
And so I don't know, are we leaning towards a future where we have different chassis, different bodies of these cars that are smaller for tracks like this? You know, like I something I said about Miami was that part of why I feel like which, you know, a great race in and of itself. I like Max. I don't care what anyone says. I like Max. I'm fine with him winning everything. I like to see my drivers win, but still. Um,
yeah,
but like I think what worked really well in Miami was for the F1 Academy drivers because they were driving the equivalent of Formula 4 cars and they were smaller and slower. We got a really great race, both races, out of
mhm,
those drivers because the cars were better suited for that track that everyone complains about. And then we ended up having a great race for, you know, F1 as well, but for different reasons. And it wasn't like
yeah,
we were really seeing like really great tactical racing in spite of the track, you know? So
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if we see upgrades, you know, maybe not 2025 or 2026 with the new engine upgrades or anything or the engine changes, but I wouldn't be surprised if by 2028 we start seeing race specific size regulations.
yeah. Sometimes I feel like it's hard to say taking away certain tracks, like, isn't arguably trying to just make the sport easier. Like, this is one of the toughest tracks for a driver as well. Like, I think
Mhm.
there's a level of being able to handle like we saw that like we saw this near miss by a Formula 2 driver and being able to see like the reaction time. Like there's a huge skill set to this track. It just may not be the most exciting race to watch, but it is like a very impressive feat to get through the race, I guess. I'm also a history nerd though, so I think it's like it is the heritage, is the excitement. And also I have like this little love for it because having gone to film school and like worked in the film industry, like con is this huge thing. So there's always this
Mhm.
like the idea of having made it in on a certain level, you go to con and then you go to the GP and then you know fly home or maybe you spend a couple extra days in the French Riviera, like whatever. There's something very romantic about it to me.
But no, I agree, and, like, I do think yeah, see, I don't, in this exact moment, have, like, a really good answer of how we can fix the track technically, like, if we can add, like, another loop or anything like that, or, like, another chicane.
Right.
Because obviously we're limited by the fact that this is a street circuit. This is the street circuit, really, for Formula
Yeah.
1. But like you mentioned, like, you know, the reality is that there might be too many races. We saw every single driver just in some capacity media training or no media training, which is it's so funny to me. All these guys have media training. They just actively choose to be little shits sometimes. They're human beings. We all do it. But it's so funny to me because everyone's like, oh my God, there's no media training. It's like, no, 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 there is.
There's a
He's
lot.
just a
Yeah.
guy. He's just a man. That's all it is. No, but like we all saw them to some degree complain about the amount of races this year.
Yeah.
And you know, Max has been pretty vocal, especially again lately, about, you know, the travel itinerary. And it's like, oh yeah, for some things it's better, but also we're hip hopping around.
Mhm.
And you know, you're doing back to back races when we should have more time between certain ones, or some should be closer. Like I think he mentioned like Japan and China should have been back to back. I kind of
Mhm.
agree. Like
Yeah.
there's some where it's like this needs to be the like there are decisions that need to be made to tighten things up. And also just, you know, George has been very vocal about how difficult the season is even on the teams and the different employees that in the different areas of the team, and how some employees shouldn't have to be at every single race, and there should be like a revolving type of schedule for the teams so that they can have proper recovery time in spite
Yeah.
of the all the travel. So I don't know. I do worry about, you know, what races would be cut in that instance, especially when you start seeing rumors about how they're trying to get the Chicago GP happening, which as an American, I'm sorry, I don't want another US race. I don't want another one.
I'll be honest with you, I don't mind another US race being on the calendar. I just don't understand the locations that we continue to choose. Like,
Mhm.
Chicago makes no sense. Like,
No
I
sense. I don't
I
get
don't
it.
understand why,
I
but
don't know when they would put it as well where it would make sense.
there are cities in America that are already set up for racing. Like, we have the Long Beach Grand Prix for
Yes.
IndyCar. We have like the Detroit Grand Prix if you want a city street track. Like, there are places that exist that are already set up versus trying to do something ridiculous, like figure out a way to race in the streets of
Mhm.
Chicago. Pass.
No, I fully agree, especially when I hear word about how, like, they're thinking about getting rid of COTA in exchange for Chicago, and I'm like, "Ugh, I don't like that." Like,
Yeah.
especially because I feel like the complaint that I hear a lot just about sports in general, with US fans specifically, not just F1, is that sports are very clearly becoming, like, something you watch from home again. Like,
Mm,
they're like, I very much advocate in my content, like, get out there, go to events, go meet people, go try new things. If you're going to a concert or a sporting event alone, like, go alone. You'll meet someone, you'll make friends.
yeah.
Um, and the US is routinely pricing people out. And we see this not even just with spectators, but like with teams where we see, the Chiefs really were talking about during the Super Bowl the cost of a suite for their families because they couldn't get tickets for their families and things like that for the
Mhm.
players' families to come and watch them play in the Super Bowl. Like it's top to bottom prices are being raised. And so I don't for some people I know it's like, oh, F1 is already seen as a very expensive sport. But the reality is that US culture as far as sports go, it is trying to price out lower tiers. Like I was genuinely shocked where for the Indy 500, my ticket was like $125 to be
Yeah.
in the stands behind the pit lane. I was
Mhm.
behind Alexander Rossi's pit crew the entire
Mhm.
day today, and that was $125. Like that
Yeah.
literally floored me. That's not normal in motorsports, it feels like now.
Yeah, I agree, and I also the thing that sucks about the idea of taking COTA off the calendar is that is the most affordable American race. Like, GA actually gets you decent views, like, you can get in for under like, depending on when you buy your ticket, you could get in for under $300 for all 3 days. Like, obviously, IndyCar's cheaper, there are things that are cheaper, but when you look at the level of, like, COTA, unlike Miami, does include the concerts, like, in front of them, not on the screen, not at the beach club, like,
Not cutting off F1 Academy?
oh, yeah, no, not at all. So, like, I went to go to last year and, like, saw The Killers and saw Queen with Adam Lambert, and, like, that was included in my ticket price, and so, like, yeah, when you do the math,
Mhm.
the two massive concerts and 3 days of racing for I think I did spend because I got them on sale, so I spent $300 for my tickets or less than that, like, including tax. Obviously, I had to
Mhm.
get there, but you can is $300 something that everybody has rolling around? No, but if you match up the idea that, like, you're spending 2 to 3 times that to go to Coachella, like, it is much cheaper to go to COTA than it is to go to Miami or to Las Vegas, so I will be very irritated if they take out the one, like, very comparatively affordable race. Well, okay, we can dive into the actual race. Ironically, just because Monaco, as it was said this weekend multiple times, like Monaco is a race that's won in qualifying. So like more of the action is to be had about what happened before in practice in um the Twitter sphere when it comes to Leclerc adopting, individuals. I'm sure everyone listening already saw it because I've posted about it 400 times. But Charles adopting Oscar for the weekend was the funniest thing.
Yes.
Okay, but did you see that Oscar's mom? Oh,
Is adopting Yuki. Ignore how I might have a tree break through my hotel room in Indiana. Yes, no. This is Yuki Tsunoda Piastri now, according to Nicole Piastri, Oscar's mom, who is it's really funny that he just does not acknowledge his mom on the internet
ever.
ever. Which I would assume it's either I'm very embarrassed by my mom and so I don't want to draw attention to her, or if it's his own way of protecting her by not like bringing her more in. But she replies to his post, so I'm like, I don't know what the goal is, but he's very particular in his online habits. It's very funny. So I would not be
Yeah,
surprised if it's like some insane separate option where it's like, oh no, it's because I don't like the color purple. Like it could be something insane. Who knows? I don't like the photo she uses. It could be something
yeah.
ridiculous. But yes, she also was like, I have an opening for a son, so she just picked Yuki. Seemingly, did nothing trigger this?
Not that I'm aware of. This is the first time I've ever heard of a connection between Oscar's mom and Yuki. But I
I
guess, like, if
know.
you were picking someone, he's the most
You pick
adoptable, I
Yuki.
suppose?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
But, like, it's funny because, like, Yuki also didn't reply to her. So low key, I know this is his mom's account. I think it's been confirmed at this point. But now I'm starting a conspiracy theory in my head that this is not actually his mother's account. And we've all just decided it is and just believe it at face value. Because like I remember early, I think it was last year, after his sprint win, I think, there was a random TikToker or like a random Twitter account that had like the same name or like her first name was the
Mm.
same name as her mom, but then like just had Piastri as like a I'm obsessed with Oscar type of thing. And people were resharing her tweets as if she was Oscar's mom, even though she was like, "Why are you guys doing this? I'm definitely not Oscar's mom. That is not what's happening here." That's not what I'm trying to make happen here, I think is what she said or something. But like and then it's like, oh no, this is the actual account. So it's like, do we know for a fact that this is his mother's account? Or are we just guessing?
I think it is because there was the race last year where Oscar I can't remember if it was that he was on pole or he was gonna win sprint or something, but basically, like, his mom wanted to come to the race, and Zach was like, "We can get you a plane," and she was like, "No, no, no, it's fine. It's okay."
Oh,
Like, but it was her, like, it was confirmed,
okay.
because there was a interaction about essentially, like, her being like, "Oh, if there were any race I should be at, it's this one," and then Zach being like, "Wait, was there a reason you couldn't come? Like, we can send a plane."
Yeah.
And she's like, "No, no, 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 it's okay." But yeah, it's the same account. So I
I
do believe it's confirmed.
Yes, I do know he has a plane. I was that was confirmed to me by the McLaren Heritage Team last year. I was like, oh, because I was with this couple and they asked like, oh, do you guys all fly in together? Does Zach fly with you guys? And they were like, no, we don't know where he parks his plane. Of course, we don't fly together. Which, in hindsight, at the time, I was like, oh, and in hindsight, it's very funny. But
Do you
yes,
know
there is a plane.
what that reminds me of? Honestly, did you see the interview with Alex where he was on, the Fast and
Okay, good.
Curious
I was gonna
podcast?
bring that up. I was gonna bring it up. Forget Charles being adopting Oscar. Okay, they're two grown men. It's fine. Grown men adopt each other all the time.
All
Um,
the time.
no, Alex went because so Monaco is obviously they have a marina. It's a whole big thing. You know, it's a big part. Like the water to the track, the distance, the paddock is literally attached to the boats. All this stuff. Okay,
Mm.
hospitality teams, hospitality. Some of them are in boats. Okay, now so obviously a lot of to get to the track, the easiest way for the drivers to do this in a lot of instances, aside from Charles who decided to ride his bike, because he's the Prince of Monaco apparently, um, is to take a boat and be delivered via a boat. And there's obviously, that famous clip of Kimi Räikkönen, I believe, and he just left the car and walked to his yacht and finished
Yep.
watching the race from his yacht. And most of the drivers live in Monaco. Charles lives there because he's born there. Most of them live there for tax reasons because a lot of athletes live there for tax reasons and also just like central location for traveling. And so Alex went on a podcast and was reminded of how different some of the drivers' upbringings are, it seems, as well as some of the drivers, the money that's in their contracts, because he shared how um, this driver was talking about the yacht that he already had and how it was too big. And so he's going to get a more daily yacht that he can bring to the Monaco Grand Prix. And Alex was like, "What?" And they joked about getting a swan boat, like one of those little paddle boats, which I'm sorry, he still should have done. It would have been hilarious to like be paddling up. It would have been so good.
The thing about it is, because my favorite part that he was explaining is he was like, "You get, like everybody gets, like, a docking zone. Like, if you have
Mhm.
a boat to use, you get one." Um, and so that's, like, how the swan boat thing came up, like, "Oh, he's just gonna get a swan boat." But I am fascinated because everybody online is like, "Oh, it's definitely Lando." And I was like, "Mm, I
I first thought George, and then my friend thought it was Lando.
I think it's George."
The phrase daily yacht took me out, and that's why I immediately thought it was George.
Well, let's actually talk about the cars driving. So, when we look at free practice, I always am like, you can't take free practice to heart, right? But
Mhm,
sometimes when the free practice is the same every time, you really want to take it to heart. And it was like
mhm.
watching the Mercedes be at the top, I really was so confused because it was like, is the car just so messed up for normal tracks that it's working well in Monaco because they explicitly didn't bring upgrades this weekend. And then I don't know. I'm always happy to see Lewis at the top. It makes me so nostalgic for good times. I'm always going to
Mm.
be a massive Lewis fan. But even seeing George up there at the same time, I was like, oh, maybe the car is turning around. And then what did they do? They changed something.
Yeah, I only got bits and pieces of free practice because I was at carb day, which needed my full attention. Because there was a lot happening here. So I only got bits and pieces of practice. But yeah, I was just like, okay, where is Max at? Because Max lately, I don't know if it's just like he just locks in during races or whatever, but it feels like almost like sandbagging. But then
Yeah.
also apparently there's been talk of like their sim driver being like, oh, the new upgraded car is like difficult to learn. And so it would make
Hmm.
sense if after practices and qualifying, Max knows the car by then because he is, regardless of what anyone says, it's just the car. Max is a talented driver because his dad made it so.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it just be that. But then, I don't know. I just feel like this track is just one of those things where it's like did Max start from pole last year or was no, he did.
Yeah.
Max started
Yeah.
from pole
Max was
last
pole
year.
last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cuz I remember there was another race where it was like, oh yeah, we always hear there's no overtaking in Monaco, which
Yeah.
yes, this race once again proves that there's essentially very little overtaking in Monaco, but it also can be done. It's just whether or not they actively choose or the teams even advise to
Yeah.
try overtaking
Yeah.
because it seems like the teams were just like, "Oh yeah, no, after lap 5, like this race is a wash. Like let's not crumple the car like Red Bull
Yeah.
did. Like let's not do that." Basically, it seems is what was happening. Um but yeah, so free practice I nothing really stood out, aside from like you said, like Mercedes doing better and then changing something and then I think we probably could just jump to qualifying honestly
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about the Lewis interview. I
I
did agree
do.
it was
Yeah.
very jarring.
I watched that interview. For anybody who hasn't obsessed over watching every post race interview at every stage of the weekend, let me catch you up. That's what I'm here for. So Lewis gave this interview where obviously he was first in one free practice, second in another. He was at the top like the entire time. And then how did qualifying go? Not great. He's behind George again. And in between the two Mercedes, you have Max. So the thing that was so jarring about that interview was that the thing about Lewis is that even when he's talking smack, it's very, like, classy, So you almost flies right by your face. But he basically said, like, "I do not expect to out-qualify George this year." Meaning, to
Mhm.
me, it does seem like because he's leaving, they are making changes in favor of George consistently and over, regardless of what he says, which we know
Mm.
from like the race itself. They asked that, he complained about the tire strategy and literally said on the radio, I told you guys, which he was right. Should have been on mediums at the start of the race. And so that if something like what happened on lap 1 happened, you can change to hard tires and not have to worry about changing again, not have to worry about managing your
Mm.
tires. Like Mercedes and now Lewis feels like he's saying it out loud, like without any sort of filter on it, is actively not listening to a 7-time world champion and sometimes
Yeah.
seemingly doing the exact opposite of what he asks.
No, and it's frustrating in one sense as well because, like, I feel like viewers and fans have been saying this for a while, that there hasn't been fighting for Lewis essentially since after Abu Dhabi 2021. Like, essentially since then, there really hasn't been fighting for Lewis, and to some degree, there's been complaints that, like, Mercedes were just kind of, like, fair weather fans of Lewis, essentially, even though they're literally his team, and that could have played a role in, Lewis wanting to leave and go to Ferrari, and obviously now Lewis is leaving for Ferrari, and like we saw the change in Lewis at the start of the season as well, and it freaked a lot of people out with like how jokey he was in interviews and goofing around with journalists. And I said it was a year-long 2-week notice. He
Yeah.
knows he's getting out of here. That's
Yeah.
great. But then, I saw the change, I'm sure you did after, the first F1 Academy round where Dorian essentially won too hard and got penalized for it, that it kind of sort of lit a fire under Lewis's ass that race and he was driving incredibly well.
Mhm.
comparatively to like what we had been seeing from him. And like we've been seeing that, but then we've also been hearing like, oh, that George got upgrades and Lewis didn't, that they're testing things out on Lewis's car to see how things work, but like it didn't work, so we didn't try it on George's car or something like that. And now
Mhm.
it seems like Lewis now realizes what the viewers and fans have been realizing, which is that Mercedes is just using him as a guinea pig because he's leaving. Which,
Yeah.
what other job would you have where, you say, "Hey, I'm going somewhere else," but then you're still there for another
For
year.
a year.
Like,
Yeah.
I barely made it through my 2 weeks notice when I left my retail job. They were weird. Like, I can't imagine doing that for a year.
Yeah, no, I think the thing about it is I think I've said this before. I think the very clear shift at Mercedes happened without Lewis realizing it, which was when Lewis said he wanted Valtteri to stay and they brought George on instead. And I think since then things have been shifting in this way that makes absolutely no sense to me personally. Like I don't hate George. I don't have anything against George. I don't think George is a champion, world champion caliber driver. And I think that's pretty obvious. Like, I think him moving up from Williams made sense in the sense that they wanted someone to move up into the seat and to begin planning for when Lewis left. But I think if you start planning for someone to leave before they even tell you they want to leave, you're going to start to have problems. And there's the frustration I have with it is like Valtteri and Lewis were a really good pair. They were very much like Valtteri was willing to take second base. Again, I think people have feelings about like how he was treated and the fact that he was treated as second fiddle and all of that, which I get. But at the same time, like sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes this sport is about teamwork and sometimes it is about sacrificing your race. And like I always come back to the same, which I may lose people when I talk about basketball, but I come back to the same thing when it comes to like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. Like you Michael was losing until Scottie Pippen came. Once they started working, Michael got all the glory. Scottie was very necessary. If you ask Michael Jordan now or you watch him in The Last Dance or anything like that, he consistently says like, yeah, like couldn't have done it without Scottie. Love that guy, very important to me. And then after Michael Jordan retired, Scottie Pippen played for another number of seasons and won no more championships. So it's like sometimes your level of greatness is being second fiddle to helping greatness happen. And
Mhm.
George is not willing to do that. Valtteri was. And Valtteri
Yeah.
was willing to sacrifice his own and I say sacrifice his career. I mean, he was up there in the same level of points because they were able to work together so well that they were able to kind of have him in second place consistently to continue to win the constructors championship. Like Valtteri's had a
Mhm.
great career. And he's a great driver, but he is like the thing that he is very good at is playing second to Lewis. And George is not willing to do that, but he's also not the level of driver that can have someone play second to him, which is the same reason why all of the talks of
Mhm.
replacements for Lewis are not someone who's going to play second to George. Like we're not seeing them say like, "Oh, let's bring in, like a lower level driver. Let's move Logan up to like obviously that's a joke, but like someone who's going to block and tackle for George is not the kind of hiring brief that they're looking for.
Mhm.
They're talking about bringing back either like a veteran driver, bringing Carlos in, which would definitely be putting him in first position over George. And there's also the talk of bringing in like
A literal child.
yeah, a literal child who everyone seems to think is the second coming of Christ. So it's like I get
Max
it.
Verstappen as Christ.
Yeah. Yes, you so it's like with that, it's like I don't really get I feel like they moved George up thinking, "Oh, George is gonna be able to develop under Lewis and that he's gonna be able to, like, take this second leg of the team, then we can bring on, Kimmy, and we can have him come in and be, the next wave and whatever." But George came
Mhm.
in thinking like, "Oh, well, it's my team now. Like, Lewis is gonna retire and it's my
Yeah.
team." So and that doesn't work.
Yeah, I think we also saw, like, the possibility when there was discussion of potentially Alex Albon moving up to Mercedes.
Mhm.
And the one thing where people were just like, "Oh, well, him and George are friends." And it's like, "Yeah, you're friends until,
And so
like, they're
yeah,
friends that I love and adore. I would never wanna work with them, because
right.
we just work very differently. I can't imagine us being partners on a Girl Scout competition, let alone a race where we have to go over 200 miles an hour. Like, that's just not something that would go well. And so I think that George might be one
Yeah.
of those friends where it's like, yeah, you're great friends until you're literally pitted against each other, which Mercedes likes to do to some degree. If you're not doing a teammate, if you're not helping your teammate, you guys are enemies. Like that's just how this works.
No, they very much have just, like, lost that secret sauce, you know what I mean? And I think what's hard about it is now I wonder how much of it, because Lewis isn't stupid, I wonder how much of it is, like, Lewis was aware of it and, like, didn't want to believe that it was happening type of situation, and something
Mhm.
happened over winter break that just finally snapped it, but it's very visible in the way that things
Yeah.
are being done this season. So,
I think the ambassadorship, I think there was a lot more to that than we know. If I was Lewis, I also would be like, "Oh, okay, so I'm good enough for your commercials for your car, where you don't even say
yeah.
my name or say that I'm a world championship driver or whatever. You just literally, my star power is big enough that you literally just have me in your commercial and it's good enough to sell cars, but I'm not good enough to be an official title, Mercedes ambassador." I also
Yeah.
would be like, "Okay, goodbye then, because what do you
Yeah, it's
mean?"
over.
And
Yeah.
yeah, we're done.
I know there are things that we will never know, but the longer we don't know them, the more unsettled I am about what they were, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, outside of the Mercedes drama, we also have the Haas drama, which I thought, like, when I first saw the alert come across that they had been disqualified
Mhm.
from qualifying, I genuinely, the way it was written in the first tweet that came through made it sound like they had been disqualified entirely from the race, and I was like, "Oh god, like, what did they do?" But
I don't know why they did it like that. I fully thought,
yeah,
yeah, disqualified is literally how it was put out. I was like, "Oh, they're not racing this weekend. That's crazy." And then it was like disqualified from qualifying, so then they have to start at the back of the grid. I was like,
yeah.
"All right then." Yeah, they could have framed that better though, fully.
Yeah, very much so. But basically the which also I asked for, like, what do people want answered during the episode, and this was something that people were very confused about. Essentially, it was
Mhm.
due to the fact that the rear wing in the DRS, like, flap was, basically slightly more open than it's allowed to be. And the thing that is
Yeah.
wild about FIA penalties to me is how many times they're basically like, "It had no effect on performance. We accept the
Mhm.
explanation from the team. We are implementing this very harsh penalty," which is basically what happened with this,
But then there's no penalty for the race.
which makes
Like it's
no
there's been
sense.
so there's we'll talk about more about this in a second, but like there's been so much inconsistencies with penalties lately. And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know, I want Fernando to get fired up with the FIA again because like we just need something to flip, you know.
I think it'll depend on it happening, which it won't. It would depend on it happening to a team that has pull with the FIA,
Yeah.
and I don't I don't see that happening, so I don't see it changing, but it's all over the place.
You don't want, I mean, I don't know, maybe they could go after Max for like violence against a pole, like, oh yes, it damaged the bottom of your car, but like you also damaged the pole. 5 place grid penalty. Like we need something like crazy to happen.
Something ridiculous. Yeah, the cone is required for
Yeah, but so
yeah,
Haas at the back of the grid, they were like, what was it, 15 and 17 for them? Was that, or 12 and 15?
12 and 15. Because when they were
Yes.
disqualified, Logan moved up to 15th, which we have to
Yes.
talk about the fact that he out-qualified Checo, which is
Yeah. Okay. Do we, okay. They clearly go back and forth over whether or not they're keeping Checo or not.
yeah,
Obviously, they're not going to move Danny Rick up. I don't think that that's going to happen at this point in time, especially since I don't know about you, because of the Adrian Newey stuff. I go back and forth about the Christian Horner situation because he said how the team handled things,
handled it. Yeah.
but then he also talked about Christian Horner in a fairly complimentary light in his letter about leaving Red Bull. So again, I'm like, okay, was this over the allegation and Christian got to stay? Which again, we still don't actually know what the allegation was, which
Yeah.
is, I think, what drives everyone insane to some degree. Or was it over, the team's cloak and dagger with some things, but also, oh, here's all this information about everything else.
Yeah.
Here's this employee that made the complaint is still on leave or probably was quietly fired at this point, and we just haven't heard any updates by now because it's been a month, if not longer. Um,
Mhm.
and it's over all of that. So I originally though, when Adrian knew he was leaving, I was like, oh, Christian Horner is out. by the end of
Yeah.
the year. He has to be. There's no way. And the reality is that Christian Horner is the main person advocating for Daniel Ricciardo at Red
Mhm.
Bull because it's not his driving performance at this point
No.
in time. And how he responded to the Christian Horner situation is not helping his marketability, which is the other reason they wanted him. So,
I really I really don't understand the Danny Rick stuff, and I have to be honest, like, because I talk about this every week or every race, like, you can go back at the beginning of the season, I really wanted good things for Daniel. Like, I really wish that this had been the season where suddenly he started driving like his old self and he had this beautiful comeback story, but he doesn't. And it's frustrating to me
mhm,
because it's one of the more obvious situations where like we're talking about him there has not been any rumor that he's losing his seat. We're talking about Yuki losing his seat. We're talking about like needing to fill Checo's spot where we still don't have like a seat for Liam. Like Yuki is outperforming him consistently. Consistently, he is outperforming Daniel Ricciardo. I get
mhm.
it, but I don't get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it just comes down to Yuki is a good driver. He is actively getting better regularly. He
Mhm.
wasn't bad to begin with, but he's clearly grown into his abilities and has developed in his abilities. And by hell or high water has been forced to swear less and be more almost obnoxiously polite to it where I feel like it physically pains him on the radio. And but the reality is that it seems like they're like, okay, we only have him until the engine regulations change. They don't see him as a V-Carb or Red Bull driver. They see him as a Honda driver
Yeah.
that they basically have loaned out the way that like Sony loans out Spider-Man to the MCU. Like
Yeah.
it kind of is that same mentality, which I'm really glad when I went to Japan, like it, considering Honda driver gets thrown around, I feel like in F1 social media, almost like an insult to
Mhm.
Yuki. To see it as a full celebration in Japan was really nice to see. And just the love for Honda and Yuki at the same time. And like literally Honda. This is a Yuki bear, by the way, in case I wasn't just putting a random teddy bear on the screen. This is literally says Sonoda right
Yeah,
there.
for the people
Um,
listening, Amanda is holding up
oh
a
yeah, sorry.
stuffed teddy bear version.
I
It's
forgot.
okay, you're
I'm
used
so
to being
used to
able to
video.
see
I'm sorry.
your
Hi.
listeners, yeah.
I just randomly keep putting up a racing suit teddy bear that has Yuki Tsunoda's name on it in front of the screen. He is adorable. He is about 11 inches tall, basically the same as Yuki. And he is also very fast, like Yuki, and also very good at overtaking, despite what this race would have you believe. But that's the track itself. But
Yeah.
no, I get what you're saying because like consistently this season, Yuki has been getting points aside from the sprint, I believe. That was it
Yeah.
just the sprint that Daniel got points in?
Yeah.
It's consistently like even the graphics they put out where like Yuki is like, "Yay, we got a point." Or like we got 2 points and then Daniel's just sitting there shaking his head. It's so god, I don't know if admin's a Yuki stan or what, but like it's so funny. It really is.
And it's also funny to me because I'm like, this year especially, Yuki is more marketable than Danny is. Like, I
Mhm.
don't see the same excitement over Danny in general as we did before, and I think it's because he doesn't have enough goodwill to be able to not perform well and not give great press, responses. I'll put it diplomatically in that way.
That's fair.
You know, like, he has to the thing about Daniel is that the way he's been able to survive poor versions of himself as a driver is to be marketable, to be this, like
The Princess Diana of Formula
yes!
1.
But he's not
Yes.
doing that. It's like if Princess it's the divorce era and it's not working for him. So,
Yeah. And it's like if Camilla was super hot and really good in a race car like Liam Lawson is. Not that I think Liam Lawson is hot because he does look like my brother. It weirds me out actually how much him and Oscar both look like a weird combo of my brother. It weirds me out so much. But like Liam performed very well and he's a
yeah.
young reserve driver who should have a seat in Formula 1 at this point. And so yeah, you look at a driver who I don't want to get into ageism or anything like that, but like he's not old, but he's older comparatively
Yeah.
to some of the grid. And, the reality that we have a feeder series, the junior series, and the last two champions for F2 don't currently have seats.
Mhm.
And, the last time we had like a very crazy overhaul was the 2019 rookies where we got 3 brand new drivers in one go. Like clearly you got people where it's like, yeah, like Liam did well. Liam did better than Liam knocked Max out of Q3 and that led to
Yeah.
Carlos winning last year. Like
Yeah.
that's crazy. So it's understandable where people are like, okay, yeah, what is Danny doing for this sport at this current point in time? Really?
Yeah. No, and it's hard, especially when you're, like, at a track that, like, Red Bull is obviously posting videos of Danny when he won and jumped into the pool, which, like, he has the statue of himself at his house from that
Mhm.
moment. Like, we get it. Like, but it's harder. It's harder to watch him flail at a place where, like, he was so great at one point. I don't know. I
Mhm.
I just I'm frustrated by it, and, that's my story. Yuki, justice for Yuki.
Yeah. Yeah, especially because, like obviously there was a lot of issues about what happened when he was at McLaren. But when he brought up the issues with the car and then was like, "Oh, I think it's something wrong with the chassis." So gave him a brand new chassis and then he performed a little bit better in qualifying, but then that progress hasn't continued. It's like, okay, it's not the car,
Yeah.
or he was joking, but like Imola, he was joking that like, oh, maybe Yuki's doing secret late night runs or something like that and getting used to the track because he lives in Imola or whatever. And like obviously that was a joke, but like I don't know. With some of the other things Danny has said recently, I don't think it's all a joke. I think to some degree he thinks Yuki is getting special treatment over him and that there's some sort of plot inside of V Carb when really the plot is just Yuki is outperforming you. That is the plot. That's it. It's not secret. It's very clear.
You know what I will say? This is a like off the beaten path prediction, but I kind of do hope we see something shake up at VCarb. Like, I would love to see Liam and Yuki on the same team next year. I also would love to see like what does Yuki do in a proper Red Bull with Max. I don't know that they're going to be great teammates if we're being honest, but I don't know that they're very suited to each other. But I don't know. I would like to see Yuki have that type of level.
I think personality wise, they do complement each other to some degree. Like you see how they joke with each other as well. They're definitely comfortable with each other. And so, I mean, but obviously, like they both have the ability to be kind of hot headed. Like we don't see that much with Max lately, but like, same with Yuki, he's reined it in. But like, would these be the teammates that would bring it out in each other where it's like, oh yeah, no, 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 move. He's going so
Yeah.
slow. Move. Let's make him move. I don't know. I want Yuki to have a seat. It'll be interesting to see what happens because I've heard I think it's just a rumor of, like I think it was Will Buxton, I believe,
Mm,
who said like, "Oh, the only reason Max would go to another team would be if they're seeing the test results of the Ford engines and it's not looking what they're hoping it's going to do." So he would go to a team that was keeping the Honda engines, which would
mm,
be Aston Martin. And
yeah.
so there's talk that potentially, oh yeah, maybe Aston Martin would take on Yuki. Obviously, Fernando has signed a lifetime contract because he won't retire before Lewis does, because I think that's truly what his plan is.
I think so
Um,
too. Yeah.
and then obviously Lance, logically everyone's like, well, obviously Lance is going to keep his contract. But I don't know. I think Lance will leave on his own accord at this point.
Yeah.
I really do. I don't think it'll be something like his dad wants him out or, the team wants him out. I think Lance will just be like, why do I want to be here at this point?
I think the thing with Lance is that eventually he's going to want to try something else, and, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I don't get the
Mhm.
sense that he wants to drive and for the rest of his life, and so when he does move on, I don't think there will be any ill will. I think his dad seems like, quite honestly, a quite supportive dad. Like, when you have a billionaire dad and you're like, "Daddy, I wanna drive Formula 1," and he says, "Sure, let's buy a team." Like, and then we'll buy another team because this team is not good enough. Like, I honestly think I think they have a good relationship. I think it's a nice thing to see from
Mhm.
time to time and, whatever, but I think it'll be fine. I think when he decides he wants to do something else, his dad will fund that too, and they'll, keep Aston Martin moving, and I think his dad very clearly likes having a Formula 1 team, and that will continue to be the case, and he's running the team like a business except for his son. But his son is getting better
Yeah.
too, so I don't know. What can you do?
But yeah, I could see potentially Yuki going because like he obviously has a great relationship with Honda. Honda is a business. They're not stupid. They don't just like Yuki because he's Japanese. He is a good
Yeah,
driver.
yeah,
So I do think there is a possibility that they would very much advocate for him to move with them to Aston Martin. I would not be surprised.
agreed. I agree. I
Mhm.
think he just needs somewhere to go for a year until then.
Mhm.
But, um, but maybe he'll
Oh, I
stay at
can't
PCAR for a
imagine
year.
they're gonna get rid of I can't imagine them getting rid of Yuki at this point. I think
Yeah.
honestly, I think it's more likely that they bring Checo down and randomly swap Daniel up. I don't like it, but
Mm,
I don't think they're gonna put Yuki up. I think they're
yeah.
looking at him. I think every nice comment that is made about Yuki currently is just helping him get to his seat back at B-Carb for the next
Yeah.
year. I
Yeah.
don't think they're seriously considering him for Red Bull. They should be, but I don't think they are.
I
But
agree.
I would I think it's more likely that they'll try and swap teammates to see if that's the way to go and see if that because I don't think Checo is performing poorly. I know today's race was one thing, but I really don't think that was his fault, frankly. And qualifying that was a shock. The gaps, the fact that he didn't win in Australia, I think was a big red flag. The fact that Max got out because of a brake lock issue, then he didn't send that rocket ship in a hyperdrive and just overtake the rest of the grid, I think is probably a really bad look. I mean, I took it as a really bad look because it's
Yeah.
like yeah, your competition, your teammate, he's out. Like you are the other Red Bull on the grid. You should be closing that gap.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think it is because rumor has been that his contract is being renewed for another year, but it wasn't official. And I think getting out qualified by Logan in a Williams makes you take a second look at that thought. Like, it's
mhm,
just not equal machinery, it's not equal capability, it's not equal experience, and it's wild
mhm,
to me. But maybe I don't know,
yeah.
maybe there are reasons that we are not privy to business-wise that make sense for him to stay.
Yeah. Well, we know that there was a rumor last year that Checo was told that if he lost P2 in the drivers championship that he was out. And I personally believe that because I think that the anxiety of that really reflected in his driving style where he was not driving like someone who has been on the grid as long as he has and
Mhm,
instead was driving like someone who was panicking and trying desperately to make up space which made him make a lot of mistakes. And then he evened out obviously and kept P2. He is not in P2. He's in P5 now because today
mhm,
Carlos and uh, Lando both overtook him. Charles is already in P2. So
mhm,
and apparently there's a what 31 gap between him and Charles and Max. So I
mhm.
mean, I don't yeah, Checo, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. Red Bull's decisions very often shock me, so I won't be surprised to be shocked, but I also think it's very possible that it doesn't make sense anymore after this year, I
Mhm.
guess. Well, the race itself, obviously, the thing I literally in my notes for the race just have like first lap mayhem in Monaco. Like that's what happened. The everything about this race happened in the first lap and the last lap, you know.
Yep.
Um, but
Yep.
the thing that was insane. I watched this race in real time, so I got up at 5:50, rolled out of my bed, went
Mhm.
downstairs, watched it at 6 o'clock this morning, and by 6:10, we were already red flagged. And
Mhm.
in all of the replays, at first I was like, "Okay, I'm not gonna sit here and watch this replay 1,000 times because it's the same thing." But then I realized there were so many different incidents in that first lap.
Yeah.
You had a Carlos hit Oscar very lightly. You had the obviously the Checo crash with both Hosses, and you
Yeah.
had the Alpine situation. So we can run through them. But my
The battle of the
goodness.
baguettes right at the start. I was watching it in real time as well. I was at my seat, the Indy 500, watching it on my phone. Someone made a comment about how I was being disrespectful and to not watch like the parade or something, I think is what he said. But I was like, I have one ear put in. I'm doing both.
Yeah.
This is the motorsport brain rot you are witnessing in real time, sir. I was like, oh, because the same thing happened in Japan at like turn two, I think it was, or turn
Mhm,
three, where Ricardo and Albon collided. And then as well, like so often in these races, I feel like because we're so focused on a battle at some point in the grid, we miss someone getting taken out for whatever reason, whether it's a crash, a puncture, or in Joe's case in Japan, it was like a gearbox issue that surprised he's out, like that you don't even realize till the end of the race because they never announce it. And so, like, yeah, we were too busy. I didn't even see the crash. They were so focused on, Carlos, Oscar, and Charles that
Mhm.
we didn't see the crash. All of a sudden, it's just like, oh no, here's a pile of dust and
Yeah.
a crumpled car. And
Yeah.
surprise, Checo's okay. Because that was a surprise. Looking
Yeah.
at the tires were stacked in on themselves in the front, which is insane.
It was when they showed, because at first I thought the red flag for some reason had to do, because that was all they were showing was Carlos. And I was like,
Mhm,
"Oh, I guess, they're gonna have to move him out and his car's completely done," which obviously devastating, but not what happened. But
mhm.
then they panned and they showed the destruction and I was like, "Is Checo okay?" Like, I truly, and then luckily we saw him, like, walking on his own 2 feet, but I don't know how, because that was
Yeah.
such a scary, scary crash.
Yeah, and it was like, oh god, like even just the replay, because like just see the car itself, and you're like, oh my god, he got out of that. It crumpled.
Yeah.
Like I know everyone's been talking about like clearly the FIA has made some great strides with the safety of this sport, which is very clearly true because that is not a crash that someone would have walked away from. I think even 10 years ago. Like
Yeah.
it that is crazy impressive that he was okay. That his body, like he didn't fracture a bone or something just from the shock of being in that crash. And even then, it's like, I'm sure Checo is a professional. These guys are all, obviously every time they get in the car, they know there's a risk.
Mhm.
I'm sure Checo pissed himself a little bit
Oh,
when
yeah.
he felt that T-bone happen because I pissed myself a little bit watching that. That was the hairiest thing. That T-bone, and you just know there's nothing you can do at that moment. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm spinning out. Maybe I can get control. No, you
No.
are a car that is going fast as fuck, is plowing you into the wall, and you get to just wait and see what
Yeah.
happens. Get your hands off the wheel so it doesn't break your wrist. Like
Yeah.
that's all you can do.
Yeah, and the thing that was so frustrating was watching the replay and listening to all the radio. Like, even Nico, you hear Nico say that was unnecessary, like
Yeah, exactly.
referring
Yeah.
it, and it was. You watch the replay and it's like there's no reason Kevin Magnussen shouldn't have backed off. It, like, this
Yeah.
track, you guys have all raced here. This is all veteran drivers. This is not like this wasn't a newbie, this wasn't a rookie. This was just genuinely, there was no reason for it. And the worst was when because they replayed it 1,000 times, they replayed Checo's onboard, and you see him look into the mirror, see
Hmm.
K-Mag coming up, move over to the left a little bit and keep going, giving him space to not do it. And K-Mag just continues to speed up and like there was
Hmm.
no reason for that accident to have happened the way that it did.
So that was that. So no investigation. Investigation ends. No penalty for anyone involved, which is crazy. And then you have the battle of the baguettes. That was a little further up, which also,
Yeah.
side note, kudos to Joe for reacting quick enough to slow down because that easily could have destroyed his race as well.
Yeah.
And avoiding the debris, and even just the way he was maneuvering the debris after the fact, I think was the best possible outcome for him. So points to Joe for that. But yes, it looked like I don't even fully understand what Esteban was trying to do because I was just listening to Gasly's radio of like, was he trying to overtake me? What was that? My car is damaged. Did he mess up
Yeah.
my race? Whatever. And I wasn't sure if Esteban just overcorrected and then hit him or if he was actively trying to overtake in that moment because
It was
it
weird
wasn't
watching the
super
replay.
clear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
watching the replay, I think no one was clear as to what he was trying to do other than
Hmm.
I mean, at first it looks like he is trying to overtake and very badly misjudging it, but
Hmm.
then at the same time, it's like it's so far off that you're like even the team
Yeah.
seemed to be lost. Like it didn't make any sense. So I
Yeah.
don't know that we're gonna know, but Esteban basically because Esteban in his post race or not post his race, I suppose, interview was basically like, I haven't watched the tape yet. I'm not gonna comment, and he did get a
And then he
penalty for
commented,
it. Yeah,
yes, a 5 grid place penalty for the next Grand Prix. Okay. Which, fine. Okay. Battling your own teammate, causing an unsafe, whatever. Okay. I get it.
sure.
Fine. Give him the penalty. But then how does he get one? But K Mag doesn't get one. And Buxton said the same thing where he was like, you either have leniency on the first lap or you don't.
We don't.
Because
Exactly.
they also gave Carlos, because he was able to get his car restarted, he was able to get it back to the pits himself. So technically, because what it is if you cause a red flag, but then you're able to get the car back, like you do get a penalty for that if you triggered a
Yeah.
red flag, essentially, even if you enter the race again. So technically, by him being able to get the car back, then obviously he didn't cause that red flag. There was a lot other
Yeah.
happening, but he could have been swept up in that red flag call and been like, oh, well, you also were involved in causing this. It could have been a penalty. So protected, but they put him back at P3, even though he had
Yeah.
fallen very early on. So it's like
Yeah.
this whole first lap, I don't know. I feel like some weird calls were made. I understand why Carlos got his place back, which I think I'm fine with for the most part.
Yeah.
But the penalty discrepancy, no penalties to a 5-place grid penalty, not a 5-second penalty, not a 10-second, whatever. A
Yeah.
5-place grid penalty is crazy.
Yeah, I will say for people who um were curious, because a couple people were curious about the like why Carlos was able to restart in the way that it was, and it was basically that they had completed less than like a quarter of the lap. So because
Mhm.
they hadn't gotten to the first, every car had not gone through the first detection point. Like it's essentially a wash. We do the race again with one less lap. So that's why we started from where we did, and because Carlos was not the cause of the red flag, and they were able to fix his tire, and he got back on his own volition. It basically is like nothing ever happened. Less one tire. He's down one tire for the race. So you have that,
Yeah.
but then the twist of that is that it still also counts for your tire allocation. So like whatever tire you started on, if you do, which is why we saw basically a no pit stop race, was because everybody was able to switch from
Yeah.
a medium to a hard and then not have to stop for the rest of the race. So with that being said, the thing
Yeah.
that is frustrating about the KMAG penalty is that it seems like the FIA has a hesitancy to award penalties that would result in a race ban. And I don't really
Mhm.
understand it because Kevin Magnussen has been racing very dangerously. Like, genuinely, this was dangerous racing.
Oh,
Miami
yeah,
was dangerous
fully.
racing. There needs to be an actual consequence for that. And the consequence needs to be, I can't remember which commentator said it, but it was after Miami where basically they were like, yeah, if you double your penalty points in one race, which KMAG did in Miami, it seems like it's time to take a week off and go back to your family and think about it, like, and then come back. It's just a
Yeah.
mess. It makes no sense.
For the race ban, would he not be able to be on site, or is it just like he can't be in the car?
I'm not totally positive about that actually, but I'm pretty sure
Mhm.
it is like when you get ejected from a basketball game, like you got to go.
Mhm.
You can't be on the sidelines. I'm pretty sure, but I don't want to be
Okay.
wrong. But yeah, I think you basically stay home
Yeah.
for the week. It's like being suspended.
Yeah, I don't know. He there clearly is a discrepancy happening. But then yeah, the same thing. It's like, yeah, he got the penalties before, which he did essentially to some degree the same thing as before, where Magnussen should have pulled back with Logan in Miami. He
Yeah.
should have pulled back. That was very clear at that point. Essentially here, Magnussen should have pulled back. Like it's at this point where it's like Logan was okay, thankfully. Sorry, Checo could have died. Like this was a very
Yeah.
scary crash. And it seems like the severity of like it's like, oh, okay, well, early on, we did leniency here. We didn't do leniency here. But like the severity of the crash doesn't seem to be being taken into effect at all,
Yeah.
which I don't know, I think should be taken into effect because like if I accidentally hit someone, but I kill them on the road, I am charged with vehicular manslaughter. It doesn't matter if
Right.
I accidentally just swerved into the wrong lane. If I killed someone or I hurt someone, I did that, you know?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
same thing kind of happens here. The outcome, the possible scenario, the possible outcome could have been horrific here. And
Yeah.
especially because like a photographer, I guess, was injured as well
Mhm.
from the debris and they're okay, but they were sent to the hospital to get checked out.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know if that's not being looked at all or anything like that. So,
And yeah, it just also seems like it was already decided before the race was over too. Like it was announced no further investigation. Um,
mm,
and I don't know, it doesn't sit right with me because it is encouraging continued dangerous racing. And like genuinely, I think everyone was shocked to see Checo be able to walk back to his own
mm,
garage, you know? And I just don't think
mm,
that's I don't know. It seems too messy to me, but it is what it is.
sorry, we didn't talk about Esteban did make a statement acknowledging that it was
Oh
his
yes,
fault.
he
His
did.
after the fact. I wonder if that was before or after Alpine said uh that they need to make some changes or make some hard choices or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it seems like though he may not get, a race ban penalty, Alpine may sideline him for the side or something for like a race. It seems like they'll put their reserve driver in for a race just to like prevent fighting between teammates.
Yeah, I really that situation was just well, that was also the thing about that is like, yeah, okay, 5 grid penalty, it was dangerous. You can't like use your teammate as a ramp to do like Mario Kart. Like that was Mario Kart racing and it's unacceptable as Alpine said during the race.
Yeah,
No, it's okay.
unacceptable. And then Esteban acknowledged that it was his fault and he takes responsibility. He apologized to the team and all this stuff. But yeah, 5 plays. I don't know. Do you think that that was harsh or not? Because I think it's harsh in comparison to the fact that Magnussen got nothing. But I understand. I think if it was just, Esteban and Gasly's collision, like whatever that was, the launch pad, I fully would be like, yeah, 5 plays grid penalty. Like if it was just that, I think I would be less critical of the
Yeah.
severity of it.
I agree. I think it really is because K-Mag wasn't penalized. I think the fact that K-Mag wasn't penalized is just out of this world insane, and the fact that it's a 5 grid penalty in isolation is probably right. Because when you watch that crash too, like, it genuinely is, like, timing-wise, he could have been driving on top of
Hmm.
Pierre's head. Like, it was that
Yeah.
that level of driving on top. So it was also very dangerous. It just in comparison seems like ridiculous that someone can take all 3 tires off of a
Hmm.
car and get no penalty versus, you know, Pierre was still able to
Yeah.
finish the race, and Esteban mostly damaged his own car. Um, but,
Hmm.
also it was coming from behind. There was no possible way that Pierre could have seen that coming and
Yeah.
avoided it in any way, shape, or form. I don't know. I think so, yeah, I think it's the fact that in isolation, probably a normal fine penalty. In conjunction with K-Mag getting nothing, not at all.
On to more serious topics. Do we think that Charles adopting Oscar is what mitigated his curse?
I think so, actually. I think it's the dog dad behavior. I think it's the
Mm-hmm.
fact that, like, he's a dad, and being a single dad, well, not a single dad. He has a girlfriend, but um,
Yeah.
being a dad to both an F1 driver and a dog, that's pretty hard. It's pretty hard, and
And an
sometimes you
F2
get good
driver. You
karma.
forgot that part.
You're right,
F2
I did
driver as
forget
well.
about that. He does have an F2
Ollie.
driver and a little
Yes.
brother. There's, like, a lot of
Yes.
parenting going on, so
I know. Yeah, it's funny because I fully think, which I thought we were getting for the first chunk of this season, because he was pissed every time he qualified or placed outside of first, which I
Yeah,
wanted to see because he was so excited in Vegas. Like, which to be there when he overtook Checo to get second, like the last 2 laps of Vegas was amazing. And he was
yeah,
so excited. But then going into this season and seeing how pissed he was and being like, oh, I'd have to be pretty pathetic to like be like he didn't say the word pathetic, but like implied like, oh, I'd have to be like pretty ridiculous to be happy with P3 or something like that.
yeah,
I was like, heck yeah, villain
yeah,
era Charles, let's go. Let's see it. Let's go. Because he also knows Ferrari's not going to enforce any type of team orders on Carlos because there's no point. What are
yeah,
they going to do? Take a seat away again? No, of course not. So you see the villain era coming up,
yeah.
but then he got a dog, and it just it's nosedived, and I was like, no, this. I'm glad that you want to, like, I love my dog. I'm sure you love Leo Charles if you see this because he obviously will because Grid Chat is amazing. Um, and I'm sure you love your dog. Okay. I don't think puppies help you win F1 races, is my personal opinion. However, clearly Leo is a good luck charm because, I mean, for a fairly boring race, it's a very historic win at the same time. We've had a lot of historic wins lately, which is very weird.
Yeah,
Um, but, he's the first Monaco driver to win at Monaco.
yeah,
Um, and I think that, yeah, 92 years they said, which is just it's really cool. It's very impressive. It broke his curse because he's never finished well in
yeah,
Monaco. Um, and it's either that he adopted Oscar and has a puppy, or it's that he placed on pole in a Monaco sim race, and that was just what he needed to get his confidence back in Monaco. Because like
yeah,
what was it 2021 when he said, "I still love you, Monaco. One day you'll love. I hope you'll love me back," or something like that. Was that 2021 or
yeah.
2022? He tweeted that out, and so like he's clearly thrilled, even the Prince of Monaco was spraying champagne. He was so excited.
Crying.
Like
Oh,
clearly so it's definitely like it feels I'm glad he won, but
yeah,
also it's like I would have liked to have seen some racing because I know it's going to be insufferable on
yeah,
Twitter next race the way it
yeah,
was after Lando's win immediately. Like it's because I love this sport. This fandom occasionally drives me insane. It really does.
Yeah. I will say the other thing about Charles's win, this particular win felt like kind of a culmination of a lot of the horrible things that he's gone through in life. Like someone posted, I think it was ESPN, posted that this was the 10-year anniversary of Jules scoring his first points in F1 at Monaco, and Charles was able to win this race. And you also had,
Mm,
the I think it was the 3-year anniversary of losing Jules a couple races back, and you have like he talked about his dad after the race and feeling his
mhm.
dad's, like, presence far more and thinking about his dad more than he thought he would, and there are these, like, very deep, like, strong moments.
Yeah, and his
Oh,
brother being interviewed and saying, like, "I've never cried for for Charles winning before. I'm crying today," you know?
yeah,
So, yeah, I agree. There's a lot of strong moments coming in. So it's like Charles fully should be proud of this win. I don't want to take that away from it whatsoever. I to some degree it sounds mean, but I wish he would have had to fight for it a little bit more in the race itself and not just in
yeah,
qualifying. Um,
yeah,
because I know he's proud of this win. He should be proud of this win. I just worry about, you know, the narrative that'll be spun past this for future races the rest of the season. The way we've seen it
yeah,
already happening with Lando for 2 races. So,
yeah. I feel like this one, hopefully, I don't know, I think when you look at the race itself, it was genuinely just watching everybody kind of, like, manage tires, and to be fair, I think it's not the way that we're used to watching people fight for wins, but he was holding off Oscar in a very specifically hard
mhm,
way, which, like, I think
mhm,
when your job is literally, like, cargo as fast as car can go, and you're being told, like, drive as slow as possible without getting overtaken, like, there were moments where Oscar could have,
mhm,
overtaken if he had gone just a little bit slower, or if he had gone just a little bit faster, he would have, run out of tires at a certain point, and I think this was a race of really specific skill that doesn't show in excitement levels, which is unfortunate when it comes to, like, the way people talk about things. But to me, even though the race itself, like, not a lot of racing action, an incredible amount of racing skill to be able to manage
mhm.
one set of tires for the entire race, speed wise, defensive driving wise. I think to me, it was a hard earned race. It just doesn't look like one.
That's
So,
fair.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
before we wrap up, I do want to note one more thing because I was
Mm.
very confused and I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. Because I know that they said to George, "Oh, no point in trying to fight for a better position here." How did we get a George pose arm length distance between the first four of the grid and the next five? Because
So,
that gap is the speed that bad for the Mercedes. Did I
no.
miss something?
So what it comes down to is what is one Lewis Hamilton radio message, which is that no one's listening to Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion at Mercedes, which is
Hmm.
that they should have started the race on medium tires because Monaco is a race where red flags
Hmm.
happen early on, crashes happen early on, and you get a free pit stop. You you have to, like, for those who don't know, like, you have to change tires. You have to use two different types of tires in the race. So if you start on medium, you have to use a hard or a soft. At some point during the race, you have to pit and change. If you start on a hard, you can, do whatever you want. If you just have to use two of hard, soft, and medium. You can't do two sets of hards. You can't do two sets of mediums. One of each, please. I think I've explained that into the ground
Hmm.
now. But basically, like, the Mercedes started out on hard tires. They should have started out on mediums like everyone else did. So when the safety car came, when the red flag came, also actually Max was on a medium tire as well. So when the sorry, Max was on a hard tire at the race as well. So when the red flag came and everybody went in, everybody else changed from their one lapped medium tire to a hard tire, which would last them to the end of the race. And obviously things got sticky towards the end. We started to see, like, some pilling, some damage there, but everybody made it through without issue. Both Mercedes were on their hard tires first. So their free pit stop, they changed to a medium tire, which meant that they had so much more tire management to have to do, and essentially, they had George just back everybody up and told him to keep going as slow as possible because everyone in front
Hmm.
of him was on hard tires. And they backed up so much that if Lando had wanted to pit without a safety car or red flag, he would have been able to get a free pit stop. He could have completely changed his tires and still come out in front of George. Um, they obviously didn't end up doing that, but, like,
Hmm.
it was just a bad strategy call. It was a bad tire call. They shouldn't have started on the hard tires. So, It wasn't that they hadn't lost so
Mhm.
much pace, it was just that they had to
Yeah,
manage medium tires for the entire race.
that makes more sense.
Yeah.
But also, the Mercedes has not been very fast. So, I would not be shocked if it was pace.
Yeah. Well, usually I would ask for
Yeah.
predictions, but I feel like we did a lot of predicting this episode, so I might just ask,
I'm trying to think of any other predictions I have. Oh, where do you think Carlos is going?
great question. I would say that before this race, I thought he was going to Audi, aka Sauber, for anyone who doesn't know that it's switching to Audi. But I think it's very possible that Red Bull conversation opens back up after this race.
I don't believe the Williams one, really. I don't doubt that there's a conversation being had. I can't imagine him going to Williams, especially not with the contract that
Yeah.
Alex just signed. I feel like if I'm Alex, I would immediately feel like I was being disrespected because Alex is obviously the first driver at Williams. And to bring Carlos on, Carlos would want to be the first driver because Carlos wants to be the first driver.
Yeah.
That's very clear with everything. Which, when the rumor came around that the contracts were starting to be closed and that Carlos was losing options again, and that Audi was closed and then Mercedes was closed, X, Y, and Z, I was like, God, he learned nothing from Ferrari because that's essentially what lost his seat at Ferrari is that he overvalued himself in the eyes of Ferrari and kept trying to get a longer because he fully could have kept his seat if he had just agreed to the 1-to-1 deal, I think it was, that
Mhm.
was discussed for a while. But he was like, no, I want a multi-year. But then the
Yeah.
moment that 7-time world champion winner, Lewis Hamilton, that they've been courting for years, it picks up the phone and is like, hey, still got that seat for me, baby. Of course, Carlos is chopped liver and the conversation changes. And which everyone always tries to be like, oh no, Carlos knew they were talking to Lewis. Of course they knew, but like they were having conversations about his contract. I don't
Yeah.
know why people are like acting like Carlos already knew he was losing his seat before
Yeah.
Lewis was brought on because that just wasn't what happened. But
Yeah.
I was hoping that he would have gotten some perspective and been like, okay, I can't be greedy in this time. And that he just needed a seat because he's already pre promised to Audi for 2026. He needs a seat for 2025. I don't know why he's so determined to try and get a multi year at this point in time when Audi has allegedly offered him so much money and they clearly want him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the thing with Carlos, which I said at the beginning when this happened,
Mhm.
the longer he waits, the less valuable he becomes because when he finished and won his race early on right after his appendicitis, like that was the time to sign a contract at the height of what you had, and because he was feeling that he was the highest level, I have to assume, like, he's missed out on opportunities, deals have been signed, doors have been closed, like, I think he needs to make a decision, and I think he has lost out on opportunities
Mhm.
by not making one. So, I would be shocked if he ends up at Williams
Yeah.
because I think the thing about
Yeah.
Williams that doesn't make sense to me would be, like, why would he go to Williams over Audi? Like, if you're gonna go to a lower level team, at least go somewhere that you know you're gonna be respected and paid a lot of money. There's not that Williams
Yeah.
isn't gonna respect him, they don't have the same level of cash to pay him, so it just seems odd to me, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, honestly, like I've joked about this on stream before, like I don't know how Williams, I know they're not the team they used to be, but I don't understand. And they even when they were the team that, was the team that was not dominant, but like a fairly heavy hitter of a team, they weren't flush with cash then either.
No.
But I don't get how they're not flush with cash now. I mean, I know he's an NPC. I'm not even a Logan fan. They've just made me a Logan fan because I don't like wasted potential. Okay.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's what they have here. That's what Logan has here, all of this. How they are not really capitalizing on the fact with the new American fan base that they have the American driver in Formula One and using that to get a bunch of American brands sponsoring their team or sponsoring Logan. I don't know how that's not happening. And then Alex is incredibly marketable anywhere in the world. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. He could so I don't know how they're not flush with money right now. It really is shocking to me. I know they're underperforming, but like so do a lot of these teams at some point and they usually still have some form of money. We can't all
Yeah.
be Mercedes, the richest team in the world.
No, agreed.
I'm thinking Audi.
Me too. I think it's Audi. We'll see. It's possible that Red Bull enters the chat again post this race with Checo, but we'll see. Well, this has been Amazing,
Mhm.
Amanda. Thank you for joining me. If people want to find you on the internet, where would they find you?
You can find me on YouTube, it's Swell Entertainment. You also can find me on TikTok, it's Swell Entertainment. Everywhere else, oh no, Twitch as well. Everywhere I do race watch alongs if I don't find my way at the race. We do like watch along streams. They're very fun, very high energy. You should have seen me in Australia. I literally started foaming at the mouth. I broke my desk chair. I was so excited. Okay. Now, I also go by Love You to Gogo and literally everything else because I made my account when I was 12, like you do when you're never logging off. So we got two different names, Love You to Gogo and Swell Entertainment. But my name is Amanda. Hi. Um, Thank you for having me on Grid Chat. Sorry for all of the cuts you're gonna have to make of me coughing. I apologize.
That's okay. It's okay. Well, thank you for joining me, Amanda. I had an amazing time. Always, if you don't want to watch these races alone, you can join the actual grid chat. I host a group chat of motorsports fans where fan behavior is encouraged, and there's no such thing as a stupid question. We watch these races live together, chat about breaking news, and of course, send each other an unhealthy amount of memes. If you'd like to join the grid chat, you can do so at tandonproductions.com/gridchat. There will also be a link to that in the episode description. Once you fill out the form on the webpage there, you'll get an invite via email from me. If you want to connect, let me know what you thought about the episode, or even just ask me another question that you'd like me to cover on the show. You can find me on all social media platforms at Marissa Kamari. And one of the best ways to connect with me is if you're listening to this podcast on Herd FM. You can find me in the community section on Herd FM, where my username is just my first name, Marissa. And once we follow each other, after every episode that you listen to, I'll be able to comment and have a conversation with you directly. So again, my username on Herd FM is Marissa. As always, I've been your host, Marissa Tandon, and thank you for joining the Grid Chat.